Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my most anticipated adult fantasy releases for 2022. And I'm sure this list will definitely change as more books are released and more announcements are made about books that are going to be coming out. These are just like the couple that I am very interested in reading and very excited about. But before we go ahead and get on into the list, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down the description box below for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. I'm going to be discussing these books in release date order, and the first one is Age of Ash by Daniel Abram. This is book 1 in a new fantasy series by him called the Kithamar series. I personally never read anything by Daniel Abraham himself, just the Expanse series which he co-wrote. In this book, we follow a girl named Alyss, and she lives in this city called Kithamar, and Kithamar is like a very, very prosperous city. It has a long history, a long bloody history, but it is very wealthy, very prosperous, and her brother ends up getting murdered, and she goes on this mission to figure out what happened to her brother, and she ends up discovering a lot of secrets about herself, the city that she lives in, and learns that she might be able to impact or change something that is going on within this city. So to be honest, that premise sounds extremely vague, and it sounds very similar to a lot of other fantasy books out there. I do have the Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham that I would like to read before I got into any of his newer works, but I did want to include it on this list because I think it does sound a lot like your very quintessential fantasy story. Age of Ash comes out on February 15th. The next book is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. This is the first book in a new series called Empire of the Wolf, and I have never heard of this author before. I don't know if he's a debut author or maybe just has not published with a major publishing house before, but this book actually piqued my interest quite a bit. In this book, we follow a character named Conrad, and Conrad is a justice, and he works for the Emperor, and a justice is basically one who upholds the law, whether he has to do that in polite ways or violent ways, and justices are not really liked by the people. One day, Conrad has to investigate the murder of a noblewoman, and as he is doing so, he begins to uncover some secrets that lead to a conspiracy within the justices that serve the emperor, which definitely affects him, and this secret could actually cause the empire to go into complete and utter chaos. So our main character has to decide how to handle this situation. So once again, it sounds very similar to Age of Ash, kind of, but very, very quintessential fantasy elements, a lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery, and I'm excited to delve into a new world, and I'm going to look up Richard Swan to see what other books he has written. The Justice of Kings comes out on February 24th. Next, we have The Book of Night by Holly Black, and Holly Black is a young adult author. She's very, very popular within the young adult realm. She's written the Folk of the Air trilogy. She's written The Coldest Girl in Coal Town. I have quite a few of her books, and I kind of said at one point that I wasn't going to read any more Holly Black, not because I didn't like her, but because none of her books ever wowed me. They were all just good. And I think this is her first venture into adult books. And I do want to give her a chance in her venture into adult fantasy because overall I do like her YA. In The Book of Night, we follow a world where shadows are extremely important and play a big role. People can alter their shadow's appearance. This can actually indicate certain social standings. You can also use your shadow to manipulate people emotionally in their head, and this comes with a cost. It takes time off of your life. Your shadow also acts as kind of like a secret keeper, so your shadow holds all of the knowledge about you, kind of like a second identity outside your own body. We follow a girl named Charlie, and Charlie is a con artist turned bartender, and she used to be involved in the world of shadow trading. I guess that is a thing. I don't really know what it is, but one day someone from her past reappears and she gets tugged back into this world of shadows. There is some magic that has to go on in the world of shadows that Charlie may or may not have something to do with. To be completely honest, this book sounds really awesome. It sounds really good. It sounds really unique. I just love the idea of a shadow having its own identity and almost own life of its own. It brings me back to that scene from Peter Pan. And honestly, this is one that I am very excited about reading. Book of Night comes out on May 3rd. Next, we have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and this is a book that is loosely based off one of the tales from Arabian Nights. I have never read anything from Arabian Nights except for Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, so I'm not familiar with all of the different stories in there. And I'm really hoping if this one does well that she might write more books based off of those stories, because I think that would be interesting retellings and will probably make me want to read the originals. In this book, we follow a main character named Luli, and Luli is a merchant criminal. With the help of her bodyguard, who is a djinn, she actually hunts and steals illegal magic. One day she inadvertently saves the life of a prince, and her identity and profession is brought to light of the Sultan, who blackmails her into going out and finding this magical lamp. With no choice but to obey, our main character heads out with the Sultan's oldest son to find this magical lamp. So this book sounds just like a lot of fun. It sounds like a desert fantasy, which if you guys didn't check out my desert fantasy book recommendations, I'll leave that up in the cards. But I think that desert fantasies are a lot of fun, and also those books that kind of include those Middle Eastern elements. The Stardust Thief comes out on May 17th. The next book is In the Shadow of the Lightning by Brian McKellen. This is a new fantasy series by Brian McKellen, which I didn't even know he was coming out with one until I was doing research for this video. And I'm very excited, although I do need to catch up on his books before I start like any of his new series. But I'm just excited that he's coming out with like a brand new world and series. In this book, we follow a main character named Demir Grappo, and he was part of this really established wealthy family, and he kind of left all of that life of wealth and influence and now kind of lives a more lowly life. But one day his mother is murdered, and he actually has to step back into the role, step back into this family to become the head of this family and kind of figure out what is going on with the murder of his mother. As Demir is kind of investigating what's going on, he has to re-enter the world of politics and guild families, and he uncovers this plot that will bring war to the Empire, and he has to kind of figure out how to stop it. So to be honest, it sounds very similar to his Powder Mage trilogy. It sounds like we have like a middle-aged, older protagonist, which is always fun to read about. So I'm very excited to see how Brian McKellen kind of brings something new and refreshing to this new series of his. In the Shadows of the Lightning comes out on June 21st. The next book is The Book of Gothel by Mary McNine, and this is a Rapunzel retelling, but this does not follow Rapunzel. It follows the witch who put Rapunzel in the tower, Gothel. And in this book, like I said, we're following Gothel. We're learning about her backstory. She was raised in a small village with her mother, but she was shunned because she was different from all the other children. One day her mother dies, so Gothel takes it upon herself to try and find this tower that her mother was always talking to her about in like fairy tales. And she comes into contact with this witch type lady who takes her under her wing. And she also learns that she is not the only girl that is seeking out this tower. This tower holds a lot of secrets, a lot of magic that people have been trying to keep hidden. I definitely enjoy villain origin stories if they are done well. The Book of Gothel comes out on June 26th. The next book I'm super excited for, and that is Locklands by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the third book in his Founder series. I don't know if it's a trilogy or if it's just the third book. And a couple of months ago, I actually looked up to see if this book had a release date because I was going to pre-order it, and I couldn't find it. So I'm so glad that it's finally coming out in 2022. But first off, let's just look at this cover. Like, the covers of this series are stunning. Like, they are some of the most gorgeous covers. I have read, obviously, Foundry Side and Shortfall, and I like them quite a bit. Definitely an author that likes to spin like sci-fi ideas with a fantasy world, and it's super fast-paced, really unique magic system, one of the most unique magic systems I've ever come across, and I'm super excited for book 3. It comes out on June 26th. And lastly, we have The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 7 in his Mistborn trilogy, or book, I think, 4 in his Second Era Mistborn series. And I've been slowly reading through the Second Era Mistborn. I have read the first 2 books. So I'm very excited to have this book kind of continue on with the adventures of Wax and Wayne and see how Brandon Sanderson continues to expand this world. And The Lost Metal comes out on November 15th. Alright, you guys, so those are just some of the adult fantasy books that I am super excited for in 2022. I can't wait to see what other new releases come out that are not on this list. But let me know in the comments what books you are excited for, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!